In the dim glow of American reality television, few figures have burned brighter, or more chaotically, than Angela Deem. Long before she became a global meme and a TLC centerpiece, Angela was simply a small-town Georgia grandmother working long shifts at a hospice, raising her grandchildren and chain-smoking her way through stress. Life was hard, loud, and unfiltered, just like her. But her world would change forever when she opened her phone and stumbled into a Facebook message request from a man 20 years her junior, a young Nigerian named Michael Ilesanmi. It was the beginning of a digital romance that would ignite a cultural storm, and eventually, the beginning of her own public downfall. The birth of an unexpected star, when TLC introduced Angela Deem on 90 Day Fiancé. Before the 90 days in 2018, the network knew they had something explosive. She was unlike any cast member the show had ever seen. At 52, Angela was brash, funny, outspoken, and totally unfiltered. While other women in the series blushed or hesitated, Angela shouted across airports, cursed in front of cameras, and waved her middle finger without apology. Her first trip to Nigeria was a spectacle. An American grandmother walking into a foreign culture with a cigarette in one hand and her heart in the other. Viewers were instantly divided. Some adored her rawness, others were horrified by her attitude. But no one could look away, a TLC executive later admitted off-camera. Angela was lightning in a bottle. She was chaos that moved ratings. Every argument, every tear, every slap of a suitcase on the hotel floor became part of the Angela Deem experience. By the time the season ended, she wasn't just a cast member. She was a headline. America's reality queen. Angela's fame grew faster than anyone could have predicted. Within months, clips of her yelling, "I'm the boss," or "Michael," became viral soundbites on TikTok and YouTube. She was both a joke and an icon, a larger-than-life Southern woman who said what others wouldn't. Fans wore shirts with her quotes. Podcasts replayed her meltdowns, and TLC producers leaned into the chaos, giving her extended airtime in subsequent seasons. Angela became the face of the 90 Day Fiancé franchise, controversial, unpredictable, and irresistibly watchable. Her relationship with Michael became a long-running saga of cultural clashes, jealousy, and heartbreak. Behind the scenes, TLC saw her as a goldmine. One insider told Reality Now, "Every time Angela appeared, our numbers jumped. Love her or hate her, she got people talking, man, that's all we needed." For Angela, fame was intoxicating. She reveled in being noticed. The interviews, the Instagram followers, the cameo requests. She didn't just want to be part of the TLC universe. She wanted to dominate it. But as with all reality stars, the line between performance and personality began to blur. The persona takes over. The Angela Deem that America fell in love with, or loved to hate, wasn't entirely an act. She was genuinely loud, fiercely protective, and emotionally explosive. But with each season, her temper became her trademark. She began to understand that the louder she screamed, the more people tuned in. Friends noticed the shift. A former coworker later recalled, "She used to be real. After TLC, it was like she turned herself into a character." She'd say, "They want crazy? I'll give them crazy." Her fights with Michael became bigger, more exaggerated, and increasingly public. Social media magnified everything. Fans debated whether she was emotionally abusive or just entertaining. Angela, ever confident, brushed off the criticism. She'd often tell interviewers, "They can talk all they want. I'm still on TV, baby." To her, fame was proof she was winning. The Michael effect. Michael Ilesanmi, by contrast, was soft-spoken, patient, and almost painfully polite. Where Angela shouted, he smiled. Where she accused, he apologized. Viewers saw a man trapped between love and humiliation. At first, fans laughed at the absurdity of their dynamic. But as the years went by, the laughter faded into discomfort. Many began to question whether TLC had crossed an ethical line by continuing to film their relationship. Online petitions emerged. Reddit threads titled, "Angela's abuse is not entertainment" gained traction. One fan posted, If Michael did half of what she does, the internet would cancel him in a heartbeat. Angela ignored it all. She dismissed the critics as jealous trolls, insisting that she and Michael were real. Yet behind the scenes, producers reportedly struggled to manage her volatility. According to one insider from Screen Reality Weekly, she'd yell at crew members, throw things, demand retakes. She was impossible to control. But she was Angela, and TLC didn't dare lose her. The fame machine by her third season, Angela Deem wasn't just a TV star, she was a brand. She promoted weight loss products, plastic surgery clinics, and even sold personalized shout-outs to fans online. Every outburst became a monetized moment, but as her fame rose, so did her ego. She began to clash not only with Michael, but with other cast members and even fans. During one tell-all special, her aggressive behavior shocked even veteran viewers. She stormed off set multiple times, yelling, "I'm done! Y'all ain't gonna make me look bad!" The irony, of course, was that she was making herself look worse every time she returned. By then, TLC executives privately wondered whether the chaos was sustainable. One producer later reflected, Angela became a prisoner of her own persona. She thought being outrageous was her power, but it became her poison. The turning point, everything that rises must eventually face the weight of its own gravity. Angela's turning point came not from TLC's editing room, but from the public itself. Audiences who once found her funny began calling her toxic. Clips of her explosive fights circulated online with captions like, "This isn't entertainment, it's abuse." YouTubers analyzed her behavior. Psychologists weighed in. TikTok creators stitched her meltdowns with commentary about power and control in relationships. The tide was turning, and Angela didn't notice, or refused to. She continued her online rants, smoking on Instagram Live, yelling at critics, and defending her behavior. The very audience that had built her fame was now dismantling it, one viral post at a time. A queen at her peak, and the edge of collapse by 2021. Angela was arguably the most recognizable 90-day Fiancé figure in the world. She appeared on spin-offs, conventions, podcasts, everywhere. But behind that massive exposure, cracks were forming. Her relationship with Michael was collapsing, her family was exhausted, and even TLC fans had begun to move on. One longtime viewer summed it up best in a Reddit thread. Angela doesn't realize it's over. The act is tired. The screaming doesn't shock anyone anymore. It just makes people sad. Her name, once a symbol of wild entertainment, had become shorthand for everything wrong with reality TV. And though she was still smiling on camera, the downfall had already begun, silently, steadily, and deservedly. The cracks beneath the fame, by the time Angela Deem entered her fourth season on 90 Day Fiancé, she was no longer just a television personality. She was an empire built on volatility. Millions watched her life unfold like a never-ending tabloid headline. Yet behind the glamour of TV lights and fan memes, the Angela the world thought they knew was starting to crack. What had begun as a love story and a character study in cultural differences was now unraveling into a public display of emotional warfare. And the cameras never blinked. Fame turns into fire. Angela once said on camera, "You don't tell me what to do. I'm the queen." It was meant to be funny, but it wasn't a joke anymore. The fame had altered her, or perhaps it revealed what was always there. Her growing fan base became a mirror that reflected her worst instincts. The louder she yelled, the more engagement she got. Every insult, every curse word turned into clicks, comments, and cash. She started treating her online followers like an audience she had to feed, not people she could connect with. A TLC producer described it bluntly to Star Reality Insider. Angela knew that her temper was marketable, but she didn't realize the difference between entertainment and cruelty. Once that line blurs, there's no coming back. During her live streams, fans began noticing how erratic she'd become, smoking, drinking, and yelling at commenters for disrespecting her. Her signature laugh had changed. It was now sharper, defensive. It sounded less like humor, more like armor, control, jealousy, and Michael's breaking point. Angela's relationship with Michael had always been dramatic, but fame turned it toxic. Every camera angle seemed to capture her dominance, her shouting matches, her accusations, her possessiveness. When Michael joined social media, Angela lost control completely. She saw every female follower as a threat. In one unforgettable scene, she confronted him with a rage that silenced even the production crew. Viewers watched in disbelief as she screamed about loyalty and respect, grabbing his phone, demanding access to his private messages. Reddit exploded that night. One user posted, "If this was reversed, if a man screamed at his wife like that, TLC would have cut the cameras and called the police." Another wrote, "This isn't love. This is control disguised as care." TLC didn't intervene. They knew controversy was currency. The ratings soared, but Michael's face told a different story, a mix of fear, exhaustion, and defeat. He had become a supporting character in his own life. The surgery saga. When Angela decided to undergo weight loss surgery, she turned her transformation into another season-long storyline. Cameras followed her through consultations, surgery tables, and recovery. But even in her most vulnerable moments, she couldn't resist the performance. On social media, she flaunted her new look with pride, often taunting critics who called her out for hypocrisy. After all, she had once criticized Michael for wanting to improve his appearance. Now she was embracing plastic surgery as self-love. The contradictions were glaring. Fans noticed. So did fellow castmates. One former co-star, speaking anonymously, told Reality Wire, "Angela would flip on people off camera. She'd smile for TLC, but the minute the cameras went off, she was screaming at someone. It was like living with a storm." Her surgery didn't just change her body, it amplified her self-importance. She began to talk about herself like a celebrity, referring to "my fans" and "my followers" as if she were Fiancé. The more confident she became, the less human she seemed. The social media downfall. Angela's social media, once her playground, turned into a battlefield. Every livestream became a potential scandal. She called out other 90-Day Fiancé stars, mocked her critics, and even revealed private arguments with Michael online. At first, fans tuned in for the drama, but gradually pity replaced amusement. Clips of Angela shouting obscenities on Instagram Live started circulating with captions like, "Someone please take her phone away." Her refusal to log off became symbolic of her dissent. She was no longer performing for TLC, she was performing for survival. A YouTuber named Reality TV summarized it best. "Angela Deem doesn't realize the show's over. She's addicted to attention, and when the cameras stop rolling, she creates her own drama to stay relevant." What began as reality television had evolved into self-destruction, live-streamed in real time. The fan rebellion. By 2022, the internet had turned against her. Petitions began circulating on change.org demanding TLC to remove Angela from the franchise for verbal and emotional abuse. Hundreds of thousands signed. Reddit and Twitter threads documented her abusive patterns, citing timestamps and episode clips as evidence. TikTok creators started exposing her in long breakdowns. Psychology channels analyzed her behavior as narcissistic rage. Angela responded exactly how they expected, by going live and yelling back. A fan commented during one stream, "We're watching her downfall in real time." They weren't wrong. Even her supporters began leaving. The laughter had turned into discomfort. The Angela Deem they once enjoyed was now unbearable to watch, and somewhere in the middle of all that noise, Michael went silent. He stopped posting, stopped engaging, stopped defending her. His absence spoke louder than her words. The TLC tightrope behind the scenes, TLC executives faced a dilemma. Angela was toxic, but she was also television gold. Her scenes guaranteed ratings spikes, yet the backlash was becoming impossible to ignore. A producer revealed to Reality Source Online, "We knew she was a liability." But her episodes pulled record views. It's a hard thing to walk away from when you're in the TV business. Still, the tone of the show shifted. Editors began framing Angela less as a wild Southern woman and more as an unstable figure spiraling out of control. The shift was subtle: longer pauses, lingering camera shots of Michael's expressions, ominous background music. The network was preparing for her exit without saying it outright. Angela noticed the difference. In one interview, she snapped, "They made me look bad. They edited me wrong. I'm the victim here." But the truth was unavoidable. She wasn't being edited, she was being exposed. The cracks turned into craters. By late 2022, Angela's empire was collapsing under its own weight. Her family began stepping back from the spotlight. Her friends refused to appear on camera. Even her loyal followers started posting critical comments. Her health suffered. Her relationship with Michael was in ruins. And yet she refused to stop. Like a performer who couldn't leave the stage, she kept screaming, smoking, and insisting that she was misunderstood. The more she defended herself, the more people turned away. A longtime fan summed it up in one viral comment. "Angela used to be the reason I watched. Now she's the reason I don't." Her legacy, once built on entertainment, was now defined by exhaustion. Angela Deem, once TLC's unstoppable queen, was now its greatest liability. The downfall and the reckoning. When the cameras stopped protecting her by 2023, Angela Deem was a household name, but for all the wrong reasons. Her meltdowns were no longer fun clips shared between fans. They had become evidence in a public trial of her own character. Once, editors cut around her worst moments to keep things light. Now they let the camera linger. Viewers could see the fear in Michael's eyes, the nervous glances of producers, the raw ugliness of a relationship on life support. Angela was no longer a character. She was a case study. A former TLC field producer told Reality Radar, "The network realized they weren't filming a love story anymore. They were filming a breakdown. It was hard to watch, even for us." What had been marketed as reality entertainment now looked like exploitation of Michael, of the audience, and ultimately of Angela herself. The final break with Michael. The public implosion came slowly, and then all at once. Michael, after years of enduring verbal attacks and humiliation on camera, reportedly vanished from Angela's life, first online, then offline. When fans noticed that his Instagram had gone silent and that he wasn't appearing in Angela's lives anymore, rumors spread like wildfire. Angela reacted the only way she knew how, by turning on the camera. She wept, ranted, and accused Michael of betrayal and infidelity. She even claimed he was using her for a green card. But the internet wasn't on her side anymore. One viral comment summed up the sentiment. After years of being screamed at, Michael finally escaped. Good for him. Her tears no longer moved viewers. They felt like manipulation. She had spent too long as the villain to suddenly play the victim, losing the fans, losing the brand. The Angela Deem brand began to collapse under its own toxicity. Her cameo sales plummeted. Sponsorship offers disappeared. Influencer brands that once courted her for promotions now kept their distance. Even TLC fan pages that had once celebrated her as TV's wild queen began posting compilations of her worst outbursts with titles like "The End of Angela Deem." On Reddit, one fan wrote, "It's funny how her boss lady act worked until she ran out of people to boss around. Every live stream, every rant, every denial only cemented her downfall. The more she fought to control the narrative, the more out of control she appeared." By mid-2023, Angela's Instagram comments were a war zone of criticism. Words like abusive, hypocrite, and canceled flooded her posts. But true to form, Angela refused to apologize. She shot back, "I ain't going nowhere. Y'all need me more than I need you." It was the language of a star who didn't realize her spotlight had already gone dark. The family fractures for years. Angela had used her family as part of her reality TV persona, especially her grandchildren. They were her proof that beneath the toughness, she had a soft heart. But as her behavior worsened, her family began pulling away. Her daughters stopped appearing on camera. Photos of family gatherings vanished from social media. In private, relatives allegedly pleaded with her to step back from TV and reevaluate her life. A source close to the family told Southern Showbiz Weekly. They were tired of the drama. It wasn't fun anymore. It was embarrassing. For the first time, Angela faced a crisis without her family to defend her. The woman who once boasted about being a protective matriarch was now isolated, protected by no one. The network steps back inside TLC. The debate finally reached its breaking point. Executives knew Angela had become too toxic to sustain. Advertisers were uneasy, crew members were complaining, and the social media backlash was hurting the brand. Without a press release or formal statement, Angela's presence on 90 Day Fiancé slowly faded. Her scenes were shorter, her storylines cut down, and eventually, her name disappeared from TLC's promotional materials altogether. An anonymous production assistant said to Screen Pulse, "They didn't fire her, they just stopped calling." It was a quiet exile. Fans noticed the silence immediately. Hashtags like #Da1 Where is Angela started trending, but this time out of curiosity, not adoration. The Queen had been dethroned without a word. The echo of the internet even after TLC moved on. The internet wouldn't let Angela fade peacefully. YouTube channels released documentaries called The Rise and Fall of Angela Deem. Podcasts analyzed her psychology. Reaction videos pulled millions of views from revisiting her old outbursts. Ironically, the content she had once controlled became her own undoing. Clips of her rage were re-edited with somber music and captions like, "This was never funny." An ex-TLC editor admitted, "It's strange to see our old footage being used as a warning now." But it fits. People finally see what we saw behind the scenes. Angela had become a cautionary tale, a symbol of how unfiltered fame can destroy a person who refuses to change. The lonely live streams by 2024, Angela's once crowded live streams had turned into echo chambers. She'd go live for hours, talking to a few hundred viewers, often ranting about haters and fake friends. There were no co-stars, no family members, no TLC crew, just Angela and a phone camera. Her rage was no longer entertaining. It was sad. The woman who once commanded millions was now performing for an audience that mostly watched out of morbid curiosity. A former fan commented under one of her videos, "This feels like watching someone argue with the ghost of their own fame." And maybe that's exactly what it was. The reckoning, eventually, Angela fell silent, not out of grace but exhaustion. There were no official announcements, no grand goodbye, just fewer posts, fewer appearances, and an unspoken understanding that the show was over. In a rare interview, she admitted, "I miss the old days, when people loved me, when it was fun." But the damage was done. Angela Deem's downfall wasn't a collapse. It was a slow erosion of trust, respect, and self-awareness. Her greatest enemy had never been the internet or TLC, it was herself. As one critic wrote in Screen Culture, review, "Angela Deem didn't get canceled. She burned out on her own flames, life." Without the lights, when TLC quietly moved on, Angela didn't realize at first that the show had truly left her behind. For years, the cameras had been her constant companions, the validation she craved and the paycheck that justified the chaos. Now the lights were off, the makeup gone, and the phone stopped ringing. The silence was deafening. Without production schedules or social media hype, Angela's days reportedly grew repetitive. Coffee, cigarettes, scrolling through comments she couldn't stop reading. A neighbor in Hazelhurst, Georgia, told Southern Chronicle Online, "She still acts like she's famous, but people here don't treat her that way anymore. Folks cross the street when she starts yelling on the phone." The woman who once commanded millions was back where she began, only now, the fame that once empowered her had stripped away every bit of normalcy. The failed comebacks, like many fallen reality stars, Angela tried to stage her own redemption arc. She teased a YouTube channel, promised a truth-telling tell-all, and hinted at podcast deals. None materialized. Her attempt at rebranding, posting motivational clips about self-love and forgiveness, was met with eye rolls from fans who remembered every insult she had hurled on television. A former TLC producer told TV Insider Weekly, she thought she could pivot into being inspirational, but the audience didn't believe it. They'd seen too much. Even her most loyal defenders had grown weary. Engagement was low. Sponsors ignored her emails. When she tried to sell merchandise emblazoned with her catchphrases, the store closed within weeks. The world had moved on, and she was still shouting into yesterday's echo. The ghost of reality. Tevangela's fall exposed something larger than her own missteps. It revealed the darker side of reality television itself. For years, networks built empires on ordinary people's breakdowns, feeding the illusion that fame could fix a broken life. Angela had been the perfect storm, raw, entertaining, unfiltered, and the industry had exploited that volatility until it became unbearable. Media critic Dana Lee wrote in the Observer Journal, Angela Deem is what happens when producers chase drama without limits. She was never coached to heal, only to explode. Her story forced TLC and other networks to quietly reassess how far they could push their stars. The shift was subtle but real. Less humiliation, more redemption, smaller doses of chaos. Angela's flameout became a warning label for the entire genre. Michael's freedom and fan vindication, meanwhile, Michael's quiet disappearance had turned into its own legend. Reports surfaced that he was living independently, far away from the noise, possibly rebuilding a life out of the camera's reach. Fans celebrated him like a survivor. Reddit threads titled "Michael Finally Free" flooded with messages of relief and support. One viral post read, "He endured what millions watched and couldn't stop. Now he gets to breathe." In a poetic twist, the man once mocked as submissive became the symbol of strength, while Angela, the self-proclaimed queen, became a cautionary tale. For every viewer who had once cheered her on, the balance felt restored. Justice, in its quietest form, had arrived. The public amnesia reality audiences are fickle. As new stars emerged, softer, funnier, less volatile, Angela's name faded into the archives of pop culture memory. Younger fans of 90 Day Fiancé recognized her face only from compilations titled Top 10 Most Toxic Moments. She became a reference point, not a participant. Her legacy sealed not by longevity but by infamy. A viral TikTok caption said it all. If you know Angela Deem, you lived through the wildest era of reality TV. It wasn't admiration. It was nostalgia for chaos that had finally ended. The loneliness of fame. Lost those close to Angela describe her current life as quieter, but not peaceful. She still keeps late nights, still smokes, still argues with fans online under new accounts. But without the audience's roar, the arguments feel hollow. A local bartender told Georgia Star Now, she comes in sometimes, sits at the end of the bar, talks about how fake everyone was. She still blames TLC, never herself. Her downfall had never been about one mistake. It was about her inability to evolve. In a world where redemption requires reflection, Angela had chosen defiance. The world responded with indifference. The cultural verdict pop culture historians now mention Angela Deem alongside other reality TV figures whose fame imploded under scrutiny. She is studied in media courses as an example of performative rage, a persona so exaggerated it consumes the real person behind it. Professor Lydia Hart of NYU's Media Studies. Department wrote, Angela's downfall teaches us that visibility without vulnerability breeds decay. When the performance ends, there's no one left to applaud. Her story, once dismissed as lowbrow entertainment, had become part of the academic conversation about ethics in unscripted television. Even in disgrace, she left a mark, just not the one she wanted. Today, Angela Deem exists mostly in fragments. Old clips, memes, gossip page footnotes. Her name trends only when fans revisit the past or when a new season of 90 Day Fiancé recycles her scenes for nostalgia. In her own words during a rare 2025 live stream, "People love to hate me. but at least they still talk about me. Maybe that's all she ever wanted, to be remembered, even for the wrong reasons. But behind that defiance was the quiet truth. The cameras may have stopped rolling, yet the judgment never did. Angela's fame was a lesson in imbalance, how the spotlight can feed the ego but starve the soul. And when the light finally fades, all that's left is the reflection of who you really were. The echoes of a reality era. Angela Deem's story doesn't end with a single scandal, a final shout, or a deleted Instagram post. It ends with an echo. She was one of the last pure products of the early reality TV era, raw, unfiltered, shock-driven, and emotionally combustible. But the world that made her famous is not the same world she left behind. When 90 Day Fiancé premiered, audiences wanted chaos. They tuned in for confrontation, culture clashes, and unpredictable human drama. Angela gave them that in abundance. But over time, the audience evolved. Empathy replaced mockery, accountability replaced entertainment. The same crowd that once laughed at her tirades began asking, "Why are we still watching this?" In many ways, her downfall marked the end of an era, the point where viewers collectively decided that cruelty wasn't comedy anymore. The mirror of fame. Angela Deem's fame was a mirror held up to her and to the audience that consumed her. Her volatility, her pride, her refusal to back down, these were amplified by millions who rewarded her worst moments with attention. As media analyst Thomas Keyes wrote in Digital Reality Review, Angela didn't create her image alone. We clicked, commented, and shared until the caricature became her entire identity. The same algorithm that built her also broke her. Reality stars are paid to be raw, but rarely taught how to be real. Once the line between character and person dissolves, rehabilitation becomes almost impossible. Angela's collapse forced fans to confront their complicity. It wasn't just her performance, it was the audience's appetite for it that sustained the chaos. The industry reflection. Inside the industry, Angela's downfall sparked quiet but important conversations. Executives at TLC, Bravo, and other networks began reevaluating the boundaries of entertainment. No one wanted another Angela, at least, not one that imploded so publicly. A senior producer from 90 Day Fiancé told RealityScope Media, Angela was a lesson in what happens when we confuse drama with damage. She made great TV, but at a human cost. The production model slowly shifted. Contracts included more clauses about mental health and off-camera behavior. Cast members were briefed on online toxicity and post-show counseling. The genre didn't suddenly become wholesome, but it did become cautious. Angela's legacy within the industry was paradoxical. She proved how lucrative chaos could be, and how devastating it was to sustain. The redemption that never came. Some stars recover. They issue apologies, take accountability, disappear for a while, and come back humbler. Angela never did. She had chances. Interviews where she could have shown remorse, podcasts where she could have spoken about growth, social media moments that begged for reflection. Instead, she doubled down. Every apology turned defensive. Every explanation became another rant. As one journalist put it in the Independent Review, Angela Deem could have become a redemption story. Instead, she chose to become a warning. In refusing to evolve, she ensured her own irrelevance. Redemption requires humility. Angela chose pride. And pride, as history reminds us, always comes before the fall. The psychological toll. The quiet aftermath. Psychologists and cultural critics studied Angela's behavior as a case of fame dependency. The constant need for validation, the fear of fading, the anger at criticism, all textbook symptoms of what experts now call reality addiction. Dr. Elaine Morris, a behavioral psychologist, explained in Pop Psych Monthly, when someone like Angela receives love through outrage, they become addicted to it. Even hate becomes a form of affection. Removing that attention feels like erasing their existence. Her endless live streams, her combative attitude, her desperation to remain seen, all were signs of withdrawal. Fame had become her oxygen. And when the cameras stopped, she found herself gasping for relevance. The internet's final verdict. The internet has a cruel memory. It forgets people, but never their worst moments. Angela's name now trends not for new scandals, but for re-uploads of old ones. YouTube thumbnails still show her mid-scream. TikTok edits still quote her catchphrases with ironic captions. But beneath the ridicule, a quiet understanding has settled in. She wasn't the villain of a show. She was a symptom of a broken media culture that rewarded dysfunction. The internet finally learned that lesson, but only after watching her fall apart. As one viral post on our 90-Day Fiancé stated, Angela Deem didn't just fall. She taught us why people fall when the world keeps asking for fireworks. The symbolism of silence. In her rare recent appearances, Angela seems subdued, tired, almost spectral. Gone are the fiery monologues and manic laughs. She speaks softer now, but the words carry regret between the lines. At a small fan event in 2025, she was overheard saying, "I miss the fun. I miss feeling loved." It wasn't a plea for sympathy. It was an admission of reality. For someone who once commanded millions, loneliness became the final price. Her silence became symbolic of something greater. That fame built on outrage has no graceful exit, only exhaustion, the legacy of a downfall in the end. Angela Deem's legacy is dual, both destructive and instructive. She exposed the emotional cost of fame, the vulnerability of reality stars, and the appetite of audiences who confuse spectacle with truth. Her story remains a cultural case file, a reminder of what happens when entertainment forgets empathy. From her rise in Georgia to her collapse on global television, every scream, every fight, every tear became a warning. The lesson isn't about Angela alone, it's about us. About what we celebrate, what we forgive, and what we destroy. Her downfall was deserved not because she was evil, but because she refused to grow. In a world that rewards evolution, she chose repetition. In a medium that thrives on vulnerability, she weaponized pride. And when the storm finally passed, the only thing left standing was the truth. Fame can make you powerful, but it can't make you loved. The last frame, if there were one final frame to the Angela Deem story, it would be a quiet one. No makeup, no lights. Just a woman sitting alone on a Georgia porch, cigarette in hand, scrolling through the comments of a world that has long since moved on. The wind hums. The phone buzzes once, then stops. No more calls from producers. No more interviews. Just echoes. In that silence lies the entire moral of her journey. That attention is fleeting. Fame is fragile and accountability always arrives, even when the cameras don't. Legacy and lessons. Angela Deem's story will always linger as one of reality television's most defining tragedies. A portrait of how the hunger for attention can turn a human being into a spectacle, and a spectacle into a warning. Her downfall was not only deserved, it was inevitable.